So this chain, I don't know when it would be broken. I am very hopeful that it would someday. But the objective of this video is not to go on a rant, but rather present these problems as an opportunity, which brings me to section 3, where we are going to take a look at best paths that might be available for you given all these problems currently in India. Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. So let me start today's video by asking you two questions, and I would want you to respond in the comment section. So question 1 is that why do you think we don't have high paying jobs in India? That's one. Second question is that do you really think that this situation will change? Now this is precisely what I'm going to talk about in today's video, because many a times I get the query that, hey Akshat, can you tell me the best career path in India? Now the career path needs to be seen in context of the economy. For example, in New York, there are a lot of banking jobs. Now there is a reason why there are so many banking jobs in New York, because majority of the large corporations are based in the US and they give out a lot of work to these investment banks which are based out of New York. Therefore, US or New York has a very big banking industry. But that is not true in India, right? So the point I'm trying to drive home here is very simple, that a job market is built on an economy. So if an economy has certain underpinnings and it has certain strengths, for example, if the economy has a very strong banking sector or if the economy has a very strong consulting sector, then resultantly jobs will be created in that economy accordingly. So with that said, let me take you through 3 things on this video. So number 1, I'll take you through the overview of economy in India and how the associated job market has developed. That's one. Number 2, I'm going to walk you through how this job market is likely to change in the next few years, in the next 10 to 15 years precisely. And third, I'm going to tell you associated best career paths given all these developments. So this video will help you understand more about the business world, economics, and the job market as an integration of all these concepts. So let's get started with this video. So now if we take a stock of the Indian economy and the Indian job market, there is a very easy categorization, and it's called a split between agriculture, manufacturing and service sector. Now there is some data that has been given out by Invest India, and I'm putting up the chart on the screen and you can see this for yourself, that what is the split of agriculture, manufacturing and service sector in India. What is the contribution of these sectors in the Indian economy? How many people are deployed across these sectors in India? And how do we compare it against US and China? So this is a very powerful graph, so let me take you through it. If you take a look at the agricultural sector in India, you will see that approximately 53% of people in the job market are employed in the agriculture and allied sectors. 53%, right? And what is their contribution to the GDP? It's 15.4%. This is a very important point to note. Number 2, if you take a look at the manufacturing sector in India, approximately 22% people in the job market are employed in the manufacturing industry and their contribution is approximately 23%. And finally, we have service sector, which again has 25% of the population engaging, but their contribution is 61.5. Important point to note here is that approximately 53% people who are working in India only contribute 15.4% to our GDP. On the flip side, approximately 25% people who are deployed in the job market, they contribute 61.5%. So an important key takeaway from this discussion is very simple, that as more and more people get employed in the service sector, more high-end paying jobs are generated and more your GDP increases, right? So this is a simple analysis, and this can be seen in US and China's context as well. For example, in China, only 26% of their entire working population is deployed in the agricultural field, right? Whereas 46% are deployed in the service sector industry. In the US, only 2% is deployed in the agriculture field and 79% is deployed in the service sector industry. So the reason why I'm discussing this macroeconomic trend is very, very simple. So unless India improves its service sector economy or service sector industry, we will continue to produce low paying jobs in India. This is precisely the reason why a country like US has at least a 20 times bigger management consulting market compared to India. Now there are 2 specific points that I want to discuss here. So number 1 point is that we understand that we need to move to a high-end service sector industry. But meanwhile, we also need to strengthen our manufacturing sector. And you might ask me a question here that, hey Akshat, India has brought in so many companies and now we have started manufacturing stuff. So won't that lead to high paying jobs? The answer is no. And there is a very specific reason why. that in India, even the manufacturing happens at a low end. It does not happen at high-end manufacturing. So if you take a look at the Singapore market, it is a major hub for semiconductor industry. It's one of the biggest hubs, right? Because that is a high-end manufacturing hub, and almost every developed country, even when they are doing manufacturing, they will do high-end manufacturing, not low-end manufacturing like manufacturing shoes or manufacturing garments. There is hardly any profit margin there in such commodity goods. So from that angle, it's very important to note that India right now, even in the manufacturing space, is producing very low-end manufacturing jobs. The moment it starts producing technical-oriented manufacturing, even the high-end job market might improve. But eventually, our goal is to get to a high-end service sector industry. Now, your second question would be that, hey, Akshat, you know what? India's IT sector is massive and it's booming like anything. We have a massive startup world. What about that? So the answer there is very interesting and very simple, that IT growth in India was an aberration. We ended up creating companies like Infosys, Wipro, and even there we were doing low-end IT services sector. You might have noticed that a lot of people back in early 2000s, there were a lot of IT jobs in India. What was the reason why? Because a lot of that work was being outsourced from the US to India. You might have heard that many people, after graduating from private colleges, they used to go to on-sites in the US, in Canada, etc. Again, these people were working at low-end income salaries in the US. But since they were moving from India to the US, they used to save a lot of money, and of course, that used to add a lot to their income. But in real terms, if you compare that to the US salary, it was still very minuscule. Now, even if you take a stock of the way IT things are shaping up, many of the processes are now getting automated. Yes, there is a big software design industry which can operate out of any part of the world, but even software design is getting more and more automated. You might have heard that now there are plug and play coding systems. So as more of this technological evolution will take place, India is going to get badly hurt in this equation. So important point to note, and this is where I'll leave the discussion on point number one, that if India has to start producing high-end jobs, it needs to move to high-end service industry like private equity, banking, consulting, wealth management, etc. Only then it can start creating high-impact jobs and high-paying jobs that retain our best workforce. Now, to make such a move, you need a very conducive economic system that unless overall India's economy improve, we will not be able to improve our service sector industry, and as a result, we will not be able to increase the number of high-paying jobs. So let's begin the second part of this video, which is where we will try to analyze and assess whether or not India can actually make changes that can lead to high-end jobs. Now I'll start this section by stating a very powerful statement. The statement is that actually economics flows from politics, not vice versa. I will repeat it, that economics flows from politics, not vice versa. Let me give you a few examples. For example, there is a country called as Zimbabwe, and it witnessed massive hyperinflation back in the day. The reason was not that there was some economic mumbo jumbo that was happening in Zimbabwe. The reason was a person called as Robert Mugabe, who was one of the most corrupt leaders in the African continent, and he ended up literally destroying Zimbabwe's economy. In fact, if you notice, Zimbabwe actually had to give up on its currency and adopt dollar as a medium of exchange. That is how bad things became in Zimbabwe, not because of some economic outburst or economic downpour, but because of the fact that they were governed by an extremely corrupt political leader. Now, without getting into the politics of things, let me just do a quick economic analysis of the current landscape in India and where it's likely to be headed. So the first point that I would want you to notice is that why do corporations shift their base to certain countries? For example, why is it that Singapore is able to attract so many multinational corporations, but India is not able to do the same? The reason is something called as corporate tax rate. Now, here is a chart for you to view and analyze. Now, I will read it from here, that if you take a look at the corporate tax rate, in Singapore, it's 17%. In India, it's approximately 30%. And for non-residents, it's approximately 40%. So you can imagine that it's approximately 2x the tax in India compared to Singapore, which is massive. If you integrate things like GST, in India, that tax rate usually is around 18% for majority of the services, especially the services that major corporations provide. This is again 2.5 times what is there in Singapore, because in Singapore that's 7%. Now there are several other much lower tax levying countries compared to Singapore also. So you can imagine that we will fall well behind in terms of the tax rate, and unfortunately our tax rate is not getting revamped. Now your obvious question here might be that, hey Akshat, why do you think that is the case? Why can't Indian government just suddenly cut the tax rates into half? The reason is again very simple, that if you take a look at the tax base of India, approximately 3% of people or 3.5% people pay taxes. So our tax base is very small. Now government needs revenues every year to survive, sustain and add value to the economy. Now, if we have such a low tax base and if that tax base is not growing because we don't want to bring more people into the tax fray for a wide variety of reasons, this tax base continues to stay small. So the government has no option but to levy high taxes on people who are actually paying taxes. Now, this first point plays into the second point, which is defining the quality of life of a particular country. Now, if a government is able to collect enough tax from its citizens, be it through a large number of people or collecting very high amount of tax from small number of people, it has a huge tax amount that it has collected. Now it can spend on improving the healthcare infrastructure, it can improve the quality of education, quality of life, environment, and bunch of different things. So unfortunately, that is happening in India at a very slow pace. Now you might say that, hey Akshat, you know what, you made a very good point about the taxation, but Scandinavian countries charge 40-45% tax to their citizens. But there is a catch there, right? When Scandinavians pay 40-45% tax to their own countries, they get corruption-free governments, they get clean environment, they get free public education system, a lot of healthcare infrastructure is built. So a bunch of services are offered by their governments. So the citizens are generally happy and they are happy paying taxes. They have an incentive to pay taxes. So creating such incentives in India looks like a distant dream right now. Now you might jump and say that, you know what, Akshat, this is completely wrong. I think you are criticizing India. So let me read out some of the highlights from a specific article that was published on November 13, 2017 in Indian Express, which explained the plights of the diplomats who come from different countries to India, especially in a city like Delhi. Now, many of them were scared about the pollution level. They were really itching to go back to their home country. They were complaining a lot. That is what the gist of the article says. Now, as a result, several of the countries actually cut down the number of posts that were given out in India. For example, hypothetically speaking, if there were 5 diplomats in India from the US, they cut down the positions and rather opened up more positions in neighboring countries like Singapore. The reason again was very simple, that actually even the world does not believe in the quality of life that is being exhibited in India. So in summary, our tax base is low. That is the reason why the government has to levy higher taxes on corporations. Plus they can't invest a lot of money in developing the infrastructure which improves the quality of life, which in turn makes citizens unhappy and make them complain about the existing scenarios. This further acts as a deterrent for foreign diplomats who go back to their own country and complain about India, and as a result, even large corporations refrain from coming to India. So it leads to a circular problem that because of bad politics, we are not able to tax more number of people. As a result, our tax base is low and we are able to spend less to create good economic impact. So this chain, I don't know when it would be broken. I am very hopeful that it would someday. But the objective of this video is not to go on a rant, but rather present these problems as an opportunity, which brings me to section 3. Where we are going to take a look at best paths that might be available for you given all these problems currently in India. So the first career track that I would suggest to you is entrepreneurship. So India is a land with a lot of problems and a lot of people. There are immense number of opportunities to solve problems. So entrepreneurship, be it in any domain, be it education, healthcare, finance, fintech, whatever you name it, there are immense entrepreneurial opportunities. So try to work with a startup that can give you a head start. Of course, the salaries are not high in real terms. Some startups pay really well, but majority of the other startups do not. So it's okay to take up a startup job from a learning perspective so that eventually you can build your own startup someday. But let me also point out that building a startup is very risky and you must understand risk mitigation and you must understand business scenarios so that you can improve your odds of becoming a good entrepreneur and a successful and profitable entrepreneur. And on the flip side, always have a fallback plan, because I personally know a lot of people who started out on their entrepreneurial journey have been at it for years, but their companies have not made any revenues. The reason is the level of competition that exists in any type of entrepreneurial venture in India. Now you might say that, hey Akshat, you know what, entrepreneurship might not be the right fit for me. So can you suggest something else? So I would suggest high-end paying corporate jobs which can get you global exposure. For example, there are a lot of boutique VC consulting firms. I run a boutique VC consulting firm. There are private equity firms. There are management consulting firms. There are big tech firms like Google, Amazon, etc. So if you get an option to work with them, try to do it because it gives you global connections. You end up working with teammates from outside India. So that can really skyrocket your career. You will get a little bit of exposure to going to different countries, witnessing different type of career tracks, career paths, working environment. So it makes you both personally and professionally more competent to add to the corporate world. Now, of course, here you need high qualifications. So always focus on getting good marks, getting into good colleges, pursuing master's degree. So that can add a lot of value for you in terms of searching for such jobs. Now, third and finally, you might say that, hey Akshat, you know what? I don't want to become an entrepreneur. I don't know if I can get a high-end paying job with a major corporation with global connections. So what else can you suggest? So the third career track that I would suggest for you is freelancing. Now, usually majority of the freelancing jobs actually pay you money in dollar terms. Now you can pick up a very basic skill. For example, it could be copywriting, website designing, digital marketing. Pick up any skill, be really good at it, build your own portfolio. It is semi-entrepreneurship, so to say, right? It's not as if that you need to run a company and register a company on day one. You can literally create a very basic website and do some work. Take some clients for free, work for them, get some good testimonials and start your freelancing journey. So according to me, these are the 3 specific career tracks that I think can add a lot of value going forward in the next 10 to 15 years. So keep learning and do watch my videos. So if you like my videos, do comment, share this video with your friends. That would mean a lot to me and I will see you on the next video.